Welcome back, fancy folks. This is your host, the Fanciest Man of Cornwood, and I am back as promised this week with one more deck tech. Tonight we're going to look at the other winner of our latest poll, or at least the latest completed poll from last week, and that is Kiora, the Rising Tides. This is another monocolored Foundation commander, or Foundations commander. And one that I just think has an interesting second ability especially, but let's go ahead and read the card. She is for 2 and a blue, a 3/2 legendary creature, Merfolk Noble. When Kiora enters, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. She also has Threshold. When Kiora attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may create Scion of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token. So I really was drawn to Kiora out of some of these monocolored Foundations commander because of that second ability. I just, for some reason, blue making legendary things and then finding ways to make them not legendary or create, copies of them anyway, even though they are legendary. That's just right up my alley. And when I saw this, I felt like I had to put it on that poll. So if you are one of the people that voted on that poll, if you're one of the people that have voted on our latest poll, which we will have a deck tech up for the winner of next Tuesday, right now that poll is currently tied. So if you'd like to cast the deciding vote, head on over to my YouTube page and you will see the poll up there in the community tab. Or if you want to keep it tied and get 2 more deck techs next week, then I am perfectly fine with that as well. I'm happy to put those out there because I love creating these decks for you guys and hopefully bringing some ideas to the table. So let's look at our strategy for Kiora specifically. Obviously, we want to fill our graveyard up to get that Threshold ability going as fast as possible. Luckily, Kiora as a 3-drop is going to get us 2 steps of the way there, which is great. But we also have lots of other cards like Careful Consideration here, which if we go ahead and ignore that benefit of the second part of the text box for casting it on our main phase and just do it on an opponent's turn, preferably right before our turn, then we'll actually get 3 more steps of the way toward having those 7 cards in the graveyard. We have lots of looters in the deck. We have lots of ways to get that graveyard filled up quickly, and we shouldn't have a problem getting to make those 8/8 octopuses or octopi, as quickly as possible. Now, once we have that online, then what we really want to do is get out either a card that turns off the legend rule for us so that we can start making an octopus every turn, or we want ways to maybe make copies that are not legendary, something like that, just so we can benefit from having that 8/8 on the battlefield. The final step, really, because we're making these big generic creatures, is to just give them some form of evasion, make sure that they can get in for damage. Levitation here is an example that will give all of our creatures flying. We also have other cards in the deck that will do similar things, and we'll look at that in one of our strategy steps. So let's look a little bit more at our looters. This deck is a little bit more focused on creatures. We did Cass on the channel who really wanted to use spells to fill the graveyard. She had access to more colors as well, which kind of broadened the options that she had. But because we're going to be running a sub-theme of mutating our creatures, we love these kind of smaller looting creatures because we're going to be able to make them much bigger, and some of them, like this Looter Il-Kor, like some of the other ones we have in the deck, actually make for really nice mutate targets because it's already has evasion stapled on. We can throw on a big mutated creature and just start getting even more benefits from that evasion. So first we'll start with Enclave Cryptologist, though, for 1 blue. This is a 0/1 creature Merfolk Wizard. It has level up for 1 generic and a blue. So during our turn, as a sorcery for 1 generic and a blue, we can put a level counter on this creature. And the more we do that, the more benefits we are going to get. However, we really only need 1 of those counters on the Cryptologist to start having it do what we want it to do, which is loot. If we do want to get it to level 3 or more, then instead of tapping to draw a card, then discard a card, which it'll do at level 1 and 2. At level 3 or more, it will go ahead and just tap to draw a card. This is good later in the game if we are already past that threshold and we want to just start getting more and more advantage from our card draw. Then obviously we are fine with dumping some extra mana into the Cryptologist and just getting that card draw online. Next, we have Looter Ilkor from 1 generic and a blue. This is a 1/1 creature core rogue with Shadow. This creature can block or be blocked only by creatures with Shadow. Shadow is extremely rare, so that basically says Looter Ilkor is unblockable, unless you're playing someone that just happens to run one of those very rare creatures. Whenever Looter Ilkor deals damage to an opponent, draw a card, then discard a card. Just a straightforward looting effect, but one that we will definitely benefit from, especially early in the game. Next, we have Reckless Scholar for 2 generic and a blue. This is a 2/1 human wizard, or creature human wizard, and it can tap, target player draws a card, then discards a card. I don't know a reason why we would want another player to be drawing and discarding, but it has that option, and if nothing else, this is just a good looter for us. It blocks a little bit better than some of these other creatures, because it can kill 2 toughness creatures, and yeah, it fits in the deck because of what it's doing. Next, we have Sift, so we do have some spells that are going to loot as well, sorceries and instants, that is. For 3 generic and a blue, this is a sorcery, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. So just a way to fill up our hand, and then at least discard 1 card, and if we're casting this with a relatively full hand, then we might also discard some more cards at the end of our turn, which just helps us get closer to that 7-card threshold goal. All right, next we're going to look at cards that, again, either turn off the legend rule for us or can create copies that are not legendary. That way we can get some kind of benefit from having that 8/8 out. First, we have Auton Soldier for 4 generic and 2 blue. This is a 0/0 artifact creature alien soldier, but you may have Auton Soldier enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it isn't legendary, is an artifact in addition to its other types, and has Myriad. So whenever it attacks for each opponent other than the one we're attacking, we'll make a token copy of this creature. It comes in tapped and attacking, and then we have to exile it at the end of combat. This is fantastic because, of course, we're probably going to be targeting our 8/8 Octopus, especially if we've kind of upgraded it some way, but we don't have to target our Octopus, and because this turns off legendary, we can even target other people's commanders, which, with Myriad, that can get kind of crazy. The other thing we can do with this, if we have some way to give her evasion, is we can actually target Kiora and just be getting tons and tons of octopi every turn, hopefully at least 3 or 4. So if we have a way to make all of our creatures evasive, then that just gets kind of out of hand in a hurry, and we just start getting a bigger and bigger board, and it's really great. Also, it is going to cause us to loot tons and tons of cards, so a bit of a risky play, but we'll be sifting through our entire deck basically within a few turn cycles, within 3 or 4 turn cycles, and that can just be really fun to get the exact card you want to hopefully finish out the game. Next, we have Irenicus's Vile Duplication for 3 generic and a blue. This is a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and isn't legendary if that creature is legendary. So, again, this is a way to copy our Scion of the Deep, but we can also use this to copy one of our other creatures if we happen to have something out that we think is just more useful. Another fun thing is that we can make a copy of our Auton Soldier and go ahead and get another Myriad attacker, hopefully of something really big and beefy that's going to put a lot of pressure on our opponents. Next, we have our 2 ways of turning off the legendary rule or legend rule. The first is Mirror Box for 3 generic. This is an artifact. The legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. Each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1. Each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with the same name as that creature. So we're probably not going to benefit too much from the third ability, but we definitely benefit from the first one. And we even benefit a little bit from the second, because it just makes those Scions and Kiora, once she has some evasion, even bigger. Next, we have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces for 3 generic and a blue. This is a 3/1 legendary creature, human rogue. You may have Sakashima enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has Sakashima's other abilities, and those are the legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control, and Sakashima does have partner. Obviously, because we're not running Sakashima as our commander, we're not worried about partner, but that being able to turn off the legend rule is fantastic. And again, this just has that flexibility that Auton and Irenicus's Vile Duplication do, where we're probably going to target Scion of the Deep and just have another really beefy attacker, but it's nice to have the flexibility to target something else if that's what we feel like the board state is kind of wanting us to do. All right, so we have these tokens. We have a bunch of 8/8s. Hopefully we have plenty of good targets for flying creatures to attack or creatures that are a little bit evasive. And we're going to look at cards now that give our creatures flying or give them ways to go ahead and get through. So first we've got Archetype of Imagination for 4 generic and 2 blue. This is a 3/2 enchantment creature, human wizard. Creatures you control have flying. Creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. Actually just saw this card again over the weekend in one of the Commander games we were playing with our group, and every time this card comes out, I just think it's such a house. You know, even for 6 mana, just turning off flying and giving your stuff flying, basically having unblockable on every single creature you control. That's pretty great to be able to do. And, you know, in mono blue, making all those tokens and copies, it just gets out of hand really quickly. So very solid card. Love to have it in the deck. Next, we have Brotherhood Regalia for 2 generic. This is an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has Ward 2, is an assassin in addition to its other types, and can't be blocked. Then we can equip that on a legendary creature for 1 generic, or just equip 3. For 3 generic mana, we can equip it on any creature we control as a sorcery. All right, so this one typically winds up going on to Kiora because it's just a nice, kind of relatively cheap, easy way to get out unblockable for her quickly. And the fact that it gives her ward as well just kind of protects our early investment in getting those tokens out. I really like the way that this can move around. A lot of the good targets in the deck do happen to be legendary or, you know, things that are copying legendary creatures. So if we have something out that we want that word on, then it doesn't hurt to be able to move this around. Next, we have Levitation for 2 generic and 2 blue. This is an enchantment. Creatures you control have flying. Very straightforward, but, you know, there's a reason that flying is so valuable. It does tend to be able to give you at least 1 target to attack in with Kiora and with our Octopi. And then it also kind of buys you time if you have a opponent that has a lot of attacking flyers themselves, because this can turn all of our creatures into blockers as well. Next, we have Rousing Reed for 2 generic and a blue. This is an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. When Rousing Reed enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards and discard a card. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has flying. All right, so obviously enchantment auras do have that possible downside of your creature getting removed. However, I love auras like Rousing Reed where we're replacing it in our hand right away. It's much less of a risk. If anything, we're just kind of out that 3 mana, which anything can happen. You can always get countered or something like that. So that's part of the game. But the fact that it both does the first thing, which is help fill our graveyard, and it gives flying to Kiora or another creature that we want to be getting in with for damage, just makes it really efficient in this deck. All right, and for our last section we're going to look at here, we've got the sub-theme of the deck, which is we want to mutate onto really good targets. We want to be either upgrading our smaller non-human creatures, which a lot of times are those looters that are going to come in, help us early in the game, and then hopefully get replaced with these mutate creatures. But then also we have targets like the second card here, which have Myriad. You know, Auton Soldier is even potentially something that could be interesting because it's just winds up being a good target for everything with its ability to copy things. So yeah, let's go through this real quick. We've got Archipelagor for 5 generic and 2 blue. This is a 7/7 creature Leviathan. It's got Mutate for 5 generic and a blue. So when we cast it for the mutate cost, we can either put it over or under a target non-human creature we control and own. They mutate into the creature on top plus all abilities from under it. So this is a way to kind of turn things into non-legendary creatures that are legends. That can be sort of useful with Kiora, but it's even more useful for the Scion of the Deep. You know, even though it is kind of a downgrade to the body in some cases, it does make us let us make another Scion of the Deep, because we don't have to worry about the copy coming in and kind of bouncing up against the other on the legend rule, because we'll have this other creature name instead. So just adds a lot of flexibility. There's lots of good targets here in the deck for it. The next one is Broodbirth Viper for 4 generic and a blue. This is a 3/3 creature snake with Myriad. So we talked about what that did earlier. Whenever Broodbirth Viper deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. This is a fantastic target for most of the mutate creatures, especially the ones with evasion, Archipelagore. Even that's not a bad target, because it can at least tap down something that turn, and then hopefully it's going to keep things tapped down the more that we're mutating onto it. Next we have Dreamtail Heron for 4 generic and a blue. This is a 3/4 creature elemental bird, has mutate for 3 generic and a blue as well. Also has flying, and whenever this creature mutates, draw a card. So just a nice way to give evasion to something else, but also, the more that we can mutate, the more that we're going to be drawing, and hopefully drawing more mutate creatures. Last, we have Pouncing Shore Shark for 4 and a blue. This is a 4/3 creature shark beast with mutate, 3 generic and a blue as well. It has flash, so we can do that at instant speed. Whenever this creature mutates, you may return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So obviously, the big risk inherent with mutating is that your creature you're kind of building up over time and getting all these mutate triggers off of could be removed. I think blue is definitely the safest color to do this in, outside of maybe green, because green has a lot of hexproof options. But blue, we're going to have counter magic. We're going to have ways to kind of hopefully ensure that our mutated creature stays nice and healthy on the battlefield, and that we're getting all these benefits. And yeah, that's one of the reasons it's one of the sub themes of the deck. The other sub theme I would say is present, but I didn't actually make a whole section for, is just making tons of token copies. Once we turn off the legend rule, that can be really good for a number of targets. Obviously the Scions are kind of an easy target because they're 8/8s. They are just nice, big, beefy attackers. But there's others as well that, especially if you turn off the legendary rule and have any target open to you, that just get kind of wonky and out of hand quickly. Really fun to build up board state around that. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed the deck. There will be a link to this particular deck on my Archidect page in the description of the video. So head over there if you'd like to see this. You can see in the bottom left there that there's also just a link to my general Archidect page, which is actually going to have not just this deck, but all of the decks that we've covered on the channel. Those are in the Fancy Ticklers folder, and you're welcome to peruse those. There's a video that goes with each of those on the channel, so if you'd like more information on a deck, check those out for sure. If you've liked the content, please feel free to hit that thumb and subscribe. Really helps out the channel, really helps kind of motivate me to keep making videos and hopefully keep bringing new deck ideas for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below if you have kind of a favorite sub-theme that you don't think we're seeing enough in decks, and maybe I can explore that for you. Otherwise, thanks so much for stopping by, and keep playing Commander.